She's gone, but not forgotten. The battlefield was burning. The sky above planet Aurelia 9 turned dark as smoke and fire covered the stars. Ships were crashing, soldiers were shouting, and in the middle of it all, a human soldier named Kara stood tall with her weapon, fighting like 10 men alone. Her team was retreating, but she stayed. "Fall back," her commander shouted in the comm. "Not yet," Kara said, breathing heavy. "Just a few more seconds." She was holding the enemy back. The alien army called the Ixari were fast, cruel, and machine-like. But Kara didn't step back. She waited until the last human ship escaped. Then everything went white. An explosion. Silence. When Reed opened his eyes weeks later, Kara was gone. They told him she died in the blast. They showed him the wreckage. No body. Just dust. But something in Reed's heart said no. Not Kara. She wouldn't die that easy. 10 months passed. Reed now lived on Outpost 73, a broken colony on the edge of space. He worked for cargo ships, keeping to himself. He had stopped fighting. He had stopped caring. But every night he dreamed of Kara, not just as a soldier, but as his sister. She was brave, kind, and stronger than anyone. She always protected him when they were kids. She used to say, "We never quit. Humans always fight back." One night, while fixing an old signal tower, Reed picked up a strange message. The voice was broken, weak, but clear. "Kara, alive. Sector 19. Help. She's not herself." Reed froze. The voice was scrambled. Could have been a trick, could have been a ghost, but the name was clear. Kara. He played the message again. And again. Kara. Alive. Sector 19. Sector 19 was off limits, a place known as the Ghost Zone. Ships went in. None came back. He went to the station commander and showed the message. "That zone is dead," the officer said. "No one's alive there. If she's there, she's already gone." "Then I'll go see for myself," Reed said. Reed stole a ship. He didn't ask for help. He didn't trust anyone. He set course to Sector 19 with only one thing in mind. If there was even a 1% chance Kara was alive, he'd bring her back. As the stars flew past his window, Reed opened an old holophoto. Kara and him, kids laughing on Earth. That was before the war, before the Ixari, before everything changed. He touched the screen. "Hold on, Kara," he whispered. "I'm coming." The closer he got to Sector 19, the stranger the space around him became. Lights blinked in patterns he didn't understand. Strange signals flooded the ship. Static, whispers, echoes. It felt like space itself was watching him. Then he saw it, a hidden planet, covered in fog and metal. Orbiting it were old satellites, broken drones, and massive alien towers. At the center was a dark station, black walls, no windows. His scanner read one word: Ixari Prison 01. Reed landed his ship in the shadows of a dead canyon. He wore stealth gear and moved silently. Inside the prison he saw humans. But they weren't human anymore. They were walking like machines, eyes empty, faces blank. Some wore alien armor. Some were guards. But none of them smiled. None of them spoke. Then he saw her, Kara, alive, wearing black armor, a weapon on her back. She was standing still, guarding a hallway like a statue. Reed's heart jumped. He wanted to run to her, to shout her name, to hold her. But something was wrong. She didn't blink. She didn't move. Her eyes were cold like glass. Her face was hard. No emotion. Reed stepped closer. "Kara," he whispered. She turned, slowly. Her eyes locked on him. "Intruder detected," she said in a flat voice. "Prepare to be neutralized." She pulled out her weapon. Reed backed away. "No, Kara, it's me, it's Reed." She didn't blink. She pointed the weapon at him. Then for just a second something changed in her eyes. A flicker. Confusion. Memory. She lowered the gun. Only slightly. Reed didn't wait. He ran. He escaped through a vent, heart pounding. His mind raced. She was alive. But they took something from her. Her identity, her dignity, her weapon. And now, she didn't remember him, didn't remember herself. But Reed had seen something, a spark, a tiny light, and that was enough. Back in his ship, he recorded a message. She's alive. They've done something to her. But I saw her. She's in there, the real Kara. I don't know how yet, but I'm bringing her back. He looked at the prison on the screen. You messed with the wrong species. And then, he smiled. The forgotten prison. The stars outside Reed's ship were silent witnesses. The dark planet behind him, the Ixari prison, now had a name in his heart. Hell. He had seen Kara, alive, breathing, standing. But she wasn't his sister anymore. Something inside her had been broken, or stolen. Reed replayed the moment again in his mind, her voice flat and robotic. Intruder detected. Like she didn't even know him. Like her memories were wiped clean. But there was something else too. In the last second, before she raised her gun, her eyes changed. Just a flicker, like a shadow remembering light. It was small, but it was hope. Reed landed his ship on a nearby moon out of scanner range. He needed to think, to plan. Charging into that place again without a strategy would be suicide. He began searching old war files. Anything about the prison. Anything about how the Ixari handled prisoners of war. He found nothing, or rather he found too much, and none of it real. Every record was edited. Files had missing dates, blacked out names, ships that never returned. Soldiers listed as KIA, killed in action, but their bodies never found. And worse, whispers of a Ixari project, Mirror Mind. It was just a code name in some deleted logs. A human scientist once captured by the Ixari had mentioned it before he died. Said they were experimenting with the human brain, breaking it, rebuilding it, using humans as living weapons when with no memory of who they truly were. Reed felt sick. They didn't just capture Kara, he whispered. They're using her. He went back to the prison. Not to rescue her. Not yet. This time, to observe. He stayed hidden in the lower vents of the structure, where old maintenance tunnels ran under the walls. From there, he watched. The prison was not just a cage. It was a factory. Humans were brought in, alive, sometimes screaming, sometimes silent. Then they disappeared into deep chambers under the surface. Days later, they walked out again. Changed, eyes empty, voices flat. Each of them now wore black armor. Each moved like a machine. No one smiled, no one cried, no one remembered who they were. The Ixari had turned them into guards, slaves, tools. Reed recorded everything. He followed one of the guards to the recalibration chamber, a room filled with lights, wires, machines that hummed with power. It was like a temple of pain. He saw Kara there, hooked to a machine, her body stiff, her face blank. A voice spoke through the intercom, cold and sharp. Subject 47 shows resistance to Phase 5. Memory echoes remain. Apply full neural wipe. A machine moved toward Kara's head. Reed couldn't watch anymore. He ran. Back on his ship, he punched the wall. Blood ran from his knuckles, but he didn't care. She's still in there, he said through gritted teeth. They can't erase her soul. He had an idea. A dangerous one. If the Ixari were wiping memories, maybe memories could also be given back. And he had something they didn't. Her voice, her past, her story. Years ago, Kara had recorded private holologs, messages for family in case of death. Reed still had one. She talked about Earth, about him, about their parents, about her fear of war, about how humans, no matter what, never surrender. Reed knew what he had to do. He hacked into an old Ixari drone left floating in orbit, took it over, loaded Kara's video log inside, and flew it directly toward the prison. If she saw the message, maybe. Just maybe, the real Kara would wake up. Inside the prison, Kara stood in silence. The other guards ignored the small drone that entered the corridor. Just another delivery unit. But Kara looked at it, a flicker again. That strange feeling in her chest. The drone opened. A small blue light blinked. A voice played, her voice. If you're seeing this, I didn't make it. Or maybe I did. Maybe I'm lost. But this is for you, Kara. Remember who you are. Remember Earth. Remember Reed. We never quit. Humans never surrender. Kara's eyes blinked. Her fingers twitched. She dropped her weapon. Alarms didn't go off. Nothing happened, but something changed. Inside her mind, a crack opened, and through that crack, a storm began to rise. Deep in the control center, a Ixari, overlord, turned toward his assistant. Subject 47 has reacted to unauthorized stimulus, it said. The human? Yes, the brother. He is interfering. The overlord's cold metal face did not move. Send the hunter team, bring him alive. And if Subject 47 resists? He paused. Terminate her. Far away, Reed felt the ground shake under his ship. They were coming. He was no longer hiding. The fight had begun, but this time he wasn't running. He would find a way into the core. He would bring Kara back, even if it cost him his life. Because no matter what the Ixari did, they didn't understand. One thing, you can't erase the human spirit. Whispers of the past inside the prison. Something was happening, something the Ixari hadn't predicted. Kara had blinked. It was a small thing, a twitch, a pause. But for a machine, even a second of hesitation was a warning sign. To the Ixari, humans were wild creatures, full of chaos, pain, and unpredictability. That's why they feared them. That's why they broke them. That's why they turned prisoners into controlled shadows of their former selves. But Kara wasn't like the others. Her memories were fighting back. And now, the cracks were spreading. In her cell, Kara sat still, staring at the wall. The message kept playing in her mind. That voice in her own, saying things she didn't understand. We never quit. Humans never surrender. It didn't make sense. Who was Reed? Why did that name make her chest feel tight? Why did the sound of that voice make her eyes water? Even though she didn't know why? She stood up, confused. She walked to the mirror in her room, something the Ixari installed to track emotional patterns. She looked into her own eyes. Something was wrong. No, not wrong, missing. She touched the glass. I am Kara, she whispered. The door hissed open behind her. 2 Ixari guards entered. Tall, insect-like figures with armor fused to their bodies. Subject 47, one said. You are to report for mental realignment. Kara turned slowly. For a second, her fingers twitched toward the weapon on the wall, but she stopped. She still didn't remember how to fight. Not yet. She followed them. But deep inside, the whisper grew louder. Reed. Earth. Never surrender. Far above, the planet. Reed watched from his hidden ship. The drone had delivered the message. But he knew the Ixari wouldn't sit quietly, and they didn't. Signal flashed on his radar. Incoming ships. Fast, sharp, deadly. Ixari hunters. They weren't coming to talk. They were coming to erase him. Reed didn't wait. He sent his ship diving toward the atmosphere, hiding inside the planet's storms. Thunder rocked the controls. Static filled his ears. But he didn't slow down. He was going back in. This time, not to watch. This time, to get her out. Even if she didn't remember him. Even if she tried to kill him again. He would not leave her behind. Back inside the prison, Kara stood in the realignment chamber. Wires touched her temples. Lights flashed across her eyes. Cold voices filled the air. Memory fragment detected, said the system. Apply override, commanded a Ixari tech. But something strange happened. The machine buzzed, then sparked, then shut down. The techs looked confused. System failure. Emotional core feedback is too high. Kara sat still. But inside her mind the voice had returned. Louder now, not just whispers, but full memories. Flash. Reed, as a boy, giving her a toy gun. Flash. Her mother's voice singing her to sleep. Flash. The battlefield, the fire, the explosion, and then flash, a white room, not a prison, a lab. She was lying on a table, surrounded by Iksari scientists. They weren't just wiping her memory, they were studying it. No, they were copying it, cloning it. Kara's eyes flew open. She screamed. The glass cracked. The lights exploded. The guards rushed in. But she was already moving. Not trained. Not planned. Just instinct. She grabbed one of them by the neck and threw him into the wall. Another came at her. She ducked, grabbed his weapon and fired. Her body remembered what her mind had forgotten. She ran, and the alarms began to howl. In the control chamber, the Iksari overlord watched the screen. Subject 47 has breached containment, the assistant said. Unexpected, replied the overlord, but not unplanned. He pressed a button. Another screen lit up. A second Kara. Same face, same body, but with glowing eyes and no soul. Activate prototype 47B, the overlord said. If the human fights to bring her back, we will show him what he is truly fighting for. Reed entered the prison from the underground system. Explosions echoed through the metal walls. He saw guards running, Iksari screaming in panic. She's awake, he whispered, almost smiling. She's really awake. He followed the sound of the chaos, room after room, door after door, until he saw her, Kara, standing in the middle of a broken hallway, smoke rising around her, holding a Iksari weapon, breathing fast, eyes wild. Kara, he called. She turned. A second of confusion, a second of silence, then, Reed, she said. His heart stopped. She remembered. At least, enough to speak his name. But before he could reach her, another figure dropped from the ceiling. Same face. Same voice. Kara? Reed asked, confused. But this one was not her. It was the clone, the copy, the weapon. It smiled, cold and empty, and raised its arm. A pulse blast knocked Reed off his feet. The real Kara screamed. The clone charged. Now the prison was not just a prison. It had become a battlefield. A war between the real and the fake, the past and the programmed. And Reed, bleeding on the floor, whispered one thing before blacking out. Don't let them take you again. The weapon smoke filled the hallway. Sparks danced across the ceiling like angry stars. Sirens wailed. Lights flashed red. Reed lay unconscious, blood trickling from his forehead. His breathing was shallow, his body motionless. In front of him, two Karas stood facing each other. One, the real Kara, her hands shaking, her memories, half broken, half returned, her body bruised from escape. The other and a perfect copy, skin flawless, eyes glowing, voice smooth and dead. Subject 47, the clone said in a calm voice. You are malfunctioning. Surrender for realignment. Kara took a step back. You're not me, she whispered. I am what you were designed to become, the clone replied. Without pain, without weakness, pure. Kara's fists clenched. That's not what I am. Correction. That is what you were built to be. Built? The clone tilted its head. You were not rescued. You were repurposed. And then the truth hit her. Not just a prisoner. Not just brainwashed. The Iksari didn't steal her memories. They used them. They didn't just try to erase her. They reconstructed her. The Kara that had woken up screaming wasn't the original. She was the blueprint. But for something worse. Something that could end all human resistance. Somewhere deeper in the prison, in a cold metal chamber, The Ixari overlord stood before a massive screen. "Engage prototype combat," he said calmly. "Project. Mirror Mind Phase 6, the assistant confirmed. Subject versus clone. Recording all data." "Excellent," the overlord whispered. "The true weapon is not strength, it is identity. When we can shape a soul, we can control a species." He turned to another screen, showing Earth from above. "Begin. Countdown for deployment." Kara's heart pounded. She looked down at Reed, still unconscious on the floor. Blood soaked his shoulder. He had come for her, risked everything, brought her back from the edge. She would not let him die. Not now. The clone lunged. Kara dodged, barely. Sparks flew as the clone's blade sliced the wall. They fought hand to hand. Every move Kara made, the clone countered it. Because it knew her. It had her training, her memories, her speed, but it had none of her heart. Every time the clone struck, Kara remembered something. Her first fight, her first loss, her first victory, her mother's laugh, her brother's voice, her promise to herself when she joined the force. Never become the enemy. And then she realized the clone wasn't perfect. It was empty. Flawless on the outside, hollow on the inside, and that would be its weakness. Kara let the clone push her back, let it gain ground. She lured it to the broken power junction behind her. At the last second, she dove aside. The clone stepped on the charged floor. Kara slammed, her boot on the panel. Lightning exploded through the corridor. The clone screamed, not in pain but in static. It short-circuited. Sparks flew from its eyes. It collapsed, twitching. Kara stood over it, breathing hard. "You may have my face, but you'll never have my soul." She ran back to Reed and pulled him up. He groaned, barely conscious. "We have to go," she said, lifting him with one arm. He smiled weakly. "You remember me?" "Every part of me," she said. "Good," he coughed, "because we're still screwed." Kara looked down the hall. More footsteps, heavier, stronger. The Ixari were sending in something else now. Not clones, not guards, but machines, war beasts, creatures with plasma arms and anti-human tech. Too many. They couldn't run forever. But Kara had a memory, a secret the Ixari thought they erased. The weapon. A prototype she helped design before her capture. A living armor. A neural-linked suit, built for one user, her. It had been hidden deep inside the prison's vaults. They tried to remove it from her, but the suit rejected everyone else because it needed one thing to activate: a human soul. Kara carried Reed through the lower tunnels. Memories led her past the blood, past the pain. She reached the vault, a giant chamber sealed by biolocks. She placed her hand on the panel. It scanned. The door opened. Inside stood the suit, tall, dark, alien and human in one. Her creation, her last hope. She stepped inside. The machine came to life. Armor wrapped around her skin. Her mind connected, her body healed. Her strength returned, not from the tech, but from the truth of who she was. She stepped out, glowing with light and fury. She looked at Reed. "I'm ready now," she said. Then she turned toward the army coming down the corridor, and she ran straight into them. Explosions shook the prison. Kara moved like lightning. The suit responded to her every thought. Blasts bounced off her armor. Her punches crushed steel. Her eyes burned with fire. The Ixari didn't expect a human to stand. They never expected one to rise. Behind her, Reed limped toward a control panel. He hacked into the prison's mainframe. "I'm opening the outer doors," he said. "We're ending this." Kara nodded. One last battle, one last chance. And then, just before they left, Reed saw a file in the system. A video log from a Ixari commander, talking about Earth, about launching clones to infiltrate human cities, about Kara's design being the first of many. He looked at her. "They're not just experimenting with you," he said. "They're planning a full takeover. Kara's eyes narrowed. Then we take the fight to them. Awakening silence returned to the prison. Smoke rose in thin ribbons from shattered corridors. Iksari bodies, machine and organic, lay twisted in heaps. The central core buzzed with dying energy. Alarms had stopped screaming. Lights flickered like they too had grown afraid. And in the center of it all stood Kara, alive, awake, wearing the weapon they once tried to rip from her, now fused to her very soul. But it wasn't over. Not even close. Reed sat near the shattered mainframe, wrapping a torn cloth around his bleeding arm. He watched Kara with cautious eyes. She hadn't spoken since the final blast. Her face was unreadable. Her hands clenched into fists. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. Something was wrong. The armor around Kara shimmered slightly, like it was responding to conflict inside her, not outside. Her memories were back. But memories didn't come back clean. They came back in pieces. And sometimes, in pain. Inside Kara's mind, the storm had begun. She saw herself lying on a table. Not once, but over and over. Dozens of versions of her. Clones. Echoes. Each one opened their eyes, confused. Each one was injected, programmed, erased, rewritten. One screamed before being burned. One broke free, only to be dissected alive. She wasn't just a victim. She was a blueprint for invasion. The Iksari were planning to spread her copies across human colonies, not as soldiers, but as sleeping weapons, hidden in plain sight waiting for activation. She saw Earth, families, cities, and in every image, one of her, smiling, waiting, listening, ticking. Kara dropped to her knees, gasping. "I'm not real," she whispered. "I'm not even me." Reed walked to her carefully. "Kara," he said softly, "you're still you." She looked up, eyes glowing. "You don't get it. I'm not the person who went to war. I'm not the hero everyone remembers. They killed her and built me out of her ashes." "No," Reed said. "They copied your skills, your face, maybe even some thoughts. But they didn't build this." He placed a hand over her heart. "They didn't build your soul. That part's real." Kara shook her head. "Then why do I feel like a ghost?" Reed looked away for a moment, then said, "Because ghosts remember who they were. You still feel pain. That means you're human. The Iksari couldn't erase that, and they never will." Kara's breath steadied, but then the screen behind them lit up. A message had activated. The face of the Iksari overlord appeared, cold and smooth, with empty black eyes. "Subject 47. If you're watching this, you've broken containment." "Expected, but meaningless," he continued, voice like poison. "You think you've escaped, but your awakening was part of the program. We always knew this would happen. That is why the infection has already begun." The screen zoomed out, showing Earth. Hundreds of small ships disguised as debris floating toward orbit. Inside each one, a sleeper, a Kara, ready to wake. "Your very existence," the Iksari overlord said, "is the key to humanity's fall. You are not their savior. You are their extinction." The screen went dark. Silence. Reed stood frozen. Kara didn't move. Then she spoke, but her voice was steel. "Then I'll be the key to ending them." Reed turned. "You want to go after them alone?" "No," she said. "We go together. You and me." He raised an eyebrow. "You remember how bad I am at flying?" She smiled faintly. "I remember everything." Her hand glowed, armor unlocking to reveal a pulse chip. "We get to the Iksari network hub. We shut down the clone program. We stop the signals from reaching Earth." Reed frowned. "That's a suicide mission. The hub is deep in Iksari territory. Defended, off the charts." Kara stood up, tall and unshaken. So was this prison. Before leaving, Kara did one more thing. She went to the cryo labs and opened every door. Inside, hundreds of human prisoners, some half-converted, some barely alive, began to wake. She helped them out, gave them food, water, hope. One soldier looked at her confused. "Are you the real Kara?" She paused, then answered simply, "I'm the one who remembers what it means to fight back." They followed her like soldiers once more, not because of the armor, not because of her weapon, but because of her will. Back on her ship, Kara sat at the controls. Reed sat beside her, tapping into Ixari comms. "You know," he said. "They'll throw everything at us." Kara nodded. "Good," she said. "I want them to know what it feels like when your own weapon turns around and chooses to be human again." As they launched, one last message was sent from the prison system, Kara's voice that broadcast across human space to every colony, every station, every sleeper agent hiding in plain sight. "Your name is not Subject 47. Your name is not clone. You are not a tool, not a machine, not theirs. You are human. You have a choice. Wake up." And far across the stars, in a small, farming colony on the edge of Earth's orbit, a girl with Kara's face dropped her tools, stared at the stars, and whispered, "I remember, they made her a monster." The stars were colder in Ixari space, not dark, not empty, just cold, like the void itself was watching. Kara stared through the window of the stolen stealth cruiser, her armored fingers resting on the glass. Ahead of her was the Ixari home sector, 10 red moons orbiting a dead black sun. In the center floated the obelisk, a twisted metal spire the size of a city. The obelisk wasn't a weapon, it was the source, where all clone signals were transmitted, where the minds of every stolen Kara, every sleeper agent, were tethered like puppets on invisible strings. Shut it down, and the clones would awaken, leave it alive, and Earth would fall. Behind her, Reed was silent. The stolen ship's interface beeped quietly as he tracked Ixari patrols. He hadn't said much since the prison escape. He watched Kara now the same way he did on that first battlefield, with awe and fear. She had changed, the suit, the mission, the purpose. But it was more than that. There was something burning in her now. Not anger, vengeance. "Kara," he said quietly, "are you sure you're still doing this to save them?" She didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice colder than space, she replied, "I'm doing it to finish what they started." As they approached the obelisk, the ship's systems failed. No warning, no signal, just darkness. The controls melted into static. The engines slowed, lights dimmed, and then the ship stopped moving. "Gravity field," Reed said. "They're pulling us in." "No," Kara said, eyes sharp. "They're inviting us in." The ship landed without crashing. Doors opened automatically. Kara stepped out, armor glowing faintly, the pulse blade on her back humming with restrained power. The inside of the obelisk was a nightmare. Walls pulsed like flesh. Cables slithered like veins. Screens showed images of Earth, schools, cities, people, all overlaid with clone facial recognition patterns. The system was learning, replacing, perfecting, and at its center, something waited, a throne of wires. China's not alive but conscious. The Ixari called it the Seed Core. It wasn't a leader, it wasn't even a machine. It was a stolen network of thoughts, built from the memories of 1,000 stolen humans. And at its core, Kara's original brain, the one taken from her when she was first captured, before the first wipe, before the first clone. She looked at it now, floating in a glass tank, hooked to 1,000 wires. It pulsed faintly, alive, screaming without sound. Reed stepped forward, horrified. "That's you?" Kara's voice cracked for the first time in days. "No, that's who I was, what's left of her." Reed turned to her. "We can get it out. Save it." "No," Kara said firmly. "It's too late. They used it. They hollowed it out." She turned to the console and raised her blade. "I'll give her peace." But the seed core spoke. Not in words, in visions. Kara was pulled into a mental space, a cold, endless void. In it stood versions of herself. One was crying. One was laughing, madly. One was covered in blood. Each one spoke at once. You were made to protect. You were made to destroy. You were made by pain. You are not real. You are all of us. Then the voices faded. One version stepped forward, the one with fire in her eyes. They made you a monster, now show them what that monster can do. Kara woke up screaming. Her blade slashed the console, the tank cracked. The obelisk shook. Screams echoed from the walls. Not human, not alien. Digital pain. Reed grabbed her arm. Kara, we have to go. No, she said. Not yet. It's not enough to kill the brain, I need to kill the code. She plugged her pulse chip into the core. The system flooded with her identity, her memories, her rage, and the network burned. Clones across the galaxy stopped, froze, twitched. Then, they opened their eyes, free. But in the obelisk, it came at a cost. The structure began to collapse. Fire, sparks, glass. The last defense system activated. Massive drones with fusion cores and hunter-class AI, Reed and Kara ran. She fought them, off at one by one, but she was slowing down. The armor cracked, her breath grew heavier, her blade flickered. She was overheating. Her body wasn't meant to hold this much power, not anymore. Kara, Reed shouted as they neared the exit. The core's going critical. We have 30 seconds. She turned to him and smiled. Then get out. He froze. No, not again. Reed, you came for me. You gave me my soul back. Let me give them freedom. No, Reed. Her voice softened. I was made to be a weapon, but I chose to be human. And humans, we don't run from sacrifice. She shoved him into the escape pod and locked the door. His fists pounded the glass. Kara, don't you dare! She put her hand against the window and mouthed the words, We never quit. Then she turned and ran straight into the core. From space, the obelisk exploded like a dying star. A blinding light cut through the Ixari Empire. Clones everywhere dropped to their knees, then stood up, human again. Reed's escape pod drifted through the wreckage, silent, broken, alone. He stared at the empty stars and whispered, You were never a monster. You were our last hope. But far below, deep in a crater on a shattered moon, a metal hand twitched, a breath returned, and somewhere inside that broken armor, a voice whispered, Not done yet. She fights like a human. The universe thought she was dead. The Ixari celebrated. Their control network had collapsed, yes, but the source was gone. Kara, the prototype, the stolen soul who turned their creation against them, had vanished in the explosion. They called her sacrifice, a glitch in the invasion timeline. They planned to rebuild. They thought the resistance would scatter. They thought humanity would forget. They were wrong, because monsters can be erased. But legends never die. On a fractured moon at the edge of the system, something stirred. Beneath, layers of burned steel and collapsed rock, a pulse flickered, then again and again, until a broken hand punched through the ash. Kara rose, armor blackened, body bruised, bones cracked, but she stood. She had no ship, no comms, no help, but she had something the Ixari could never understand. Will. The will to fight. The will to return. The will to finish what they started. Meanwhile, Earth was in chaos. News of the clones had spread like wildfire. Cities scanned every citizen. Trust collapsed. Paranoia rose, but then came the transmissions. Not from military leaders, not from politicians, from free clones, awakened across dozens of colonies. Their messages were all the same. I remember, I'm human, I want to fight. And one voice led them all. Not loud, not angry, just steady. Reed's broadcast from a hidden rebel channel. He spoke daily. She freed us. Kara gave her life to break their control. But this isn't over. The Ixari are watching, waiting. We need to show them one thing, that what they built to break us only made us stronger. Across the stars, humans prepared for war. But some asked the same question. Where is she? Kara spent weeks healing in the ruins of the obelisk's moon, eating from crash supplies, patching her armor with scraps. Her memories were whole now, not fragments, not whispers. She remembered her mother's lullaby, her brother's laughter, the taste of rain on Earth. But she also remembered everything the Ixari did, the experiments, the screams, the hundreds of hers created in labs like rats. She had destroyed the core, yes, but the Ixari still ruled half the galaxy, and they would rise again unless someone stopped them, not as a weapon, not as a ghost, but as a human who chose to fight. One night, her helmet caught a signal. Broken. Weak, but clear. Reed's voice. Kara, if you're out there, we need you. We need more than a story. We need a spark. She looked up at the stars and smiled. The legend was coming back. 1 month later, in orbit above Titan Station, the Ixari launched a strike. Their ships moved like blades, silent, perfect. They expected surrender. What they got instead was fire. From the darkness, a small human cruiser shot through their formation like a meteor. Boarding pods launched. A figure stepped out onto their command deck. Alone. Unarmed. Until her armor lit up. Until her blade grew from her hand like living fire. Until she spoke. You remember my face, she said. Now remember what we are. She tore through them, not like a machine, not like a weapon, but like something with fury, with purpose, with soul. Every hit was a message. Every breath was defiance. Every life she saved reminded the Ixari. She fights like a human. Back on Earth, screens lit up across every city. Live feeds from rebel satellites showed her, Kara, standing on the deck of a stolen Ixari dreadnought. She faced the camera. No helmet, no mask, only truth. This is for everyone they broke, for every memory they stole, for every lie they fed us. I am not a clone, not a ghost, not their experiment. I am Kara, and this is a war they can't win. The screen cut out, and humanity roared. In the weeks that followed, Kara led the first counterstrike. Clones followed her, soldiers joined her, even exiled AI, once controlled by the Ixari, pledged themselves to her cause. She became more than a name. She became a flame. And the enemy? They watched as their perfect design collapsed from the inside, one by one. Not because of tech, not because of power, because one human remembered who she was. Years later, statues of Kara stood on every world she had saved. Not tall, not polished, just real, battle-scarred, unfinished. Like the fight she started, a reminder that the war for identity never truly ends. Children learned her story in schools, not as a hero, not as a soldier, but as something rarer. Survivor who chose to become more than what the enemy made her. At the base of every statue, one line was carved in her own words. They took everything, my name, my weapon, my soul. But they forgot one thing. I'm human, and we always come back.